Welcome to the creative community. I'm your host, David Starkey, and my guest this time is photographer Elizabeth Weber. Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you.
Super excited to talk about your work. You are an environmental activist in addition to being a photographer, and those strands are woven just kind of inextricably together, so that's going to come up a lot as we talk. But before we get to your first set of photographs, which is about the Western monarch, tell me a little bit about how you got from the time you were born to the time you're sitting in this chair in, like 3 minutes or so.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I guess the most important part to share and why I have focused on environmental issues is probably goes back to how I was raised. And I grew up, I was born in Berkeley and then grew up in Bolinas on the north coast of California. And my parents were farming. They were farming organically and chose to live really simply. And so we lived in a caboose.
Oh, wow.
And my dad started farming with horses and a plow, and so we didn't have electricity. And
you lived in a literal caboose?
In a caboose, yeah, we did, yeah. Yeah, and so that experience of living simply, I chose to live that way, gave me as a kid the opportunity to be outside in nature and to feel really connected to nature and not separate from it. And I think that experience has really been the thread that has continued through my life and goes into my work.
Well, I know that Bolinas had a thriving arts and poetry culture. What was that like growing up as a kid?
Yeah, that's right. There was a combination of many poets and writers, painters, and then the Back to the Land movement, so the farmers and so this great combination of people. And so I really did grow up with a lot of people to look up to.
Anyone in specific?
Well, that's so hard. Well, I mean, my mom is an artist as well, and she was a painter and then turned her paintings into tapestries. But many, many wonderful artists.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did you move from Bolinas here to Santa Barbara?
Well, it's a long journey, but I've been in Santa Barbara now for 10 years. And in the meantime, had 3 children, became a mother, which accentuated my care for the environment and concern. And so, yeah.
But you haven't always been a photographer, though, right? When did you?
Yeah. Well, that's right. So I did start photography early in high school.
Okay.
And when my children were young, I had a darkroom. I was doing photography.
Oh, cool.
I created a darkroom in my basement. I used to shoot and film. But I also was doing other things. I founded and ran a fund called Foster Futures Fund for kids in foster care. And I was a court-appointed special advocate at CASA for foster youth. And so that's been, had for a large time, over 20 years, was my focus on top of raising my children, and then always having a hand in photography as well.
Okay. But you more recently have really kind of made that your focus, right?
Yeah, that's right. In the past, really, 10 years or so, when I started photographing and traveling with Global Green Grants Fund, that's when I really started to fall more in love with what photography can do and how we can contribute to the conversation on many different issues as photographers.
So I don't know, I think your website is elizabethweber.com?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's a good one.
That's easy.
If people want to go on and take a look there, we're not going to be able to look at all the photographs you've taken, but you have these environmental portraits that are really moving, of people from Mozambique, from India, from Cambodia, a lot of traveling and a lot of sort of listening, it looks like, and paying attention to folks.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a gift the years I traveled with Global Green Grants Fund and was able to meet their grantees and learn about, how people are responding to different environmental problems. And so I really did have the opportunity to listen to people, like you said, and speak with them and photograph them as well. And so those were very, precious times for me and really ignited my love of photography even more.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about your photos, and people are wondering what do they look like. Let's go to the first set of images. This is a return of the Western monarch. We try and keep our shows evergreen so that someone may be watching this 10 years in the future in, 2033 or something like that. So this exhibition may well have passed, but if people are watching in the immediate present, it is up right now at the new Environmental Center. Tell us a little bit about that space.
Yeah, so the Community Environmental Council just opened a new environmental hub, and it's right in downtown Santa Barbara. It's right across from the Granada Theater, and so this is the first exhibit for the space,
great,
but there will be many more, and it's really great for artists to know about that.
Right. And it will be work that is focused on the environment.
I don't know the details, but that would make sense. Yeah.
Well, the process that you have, and these are big photographs, right? Something like this. These aren't little tiny photographs that we're talking about.
Yeah, they're different sizes, but around 19 by 24. Sometimes slightly larger or smaller.
Yeah. Tell us about this process. Now, I know that you've said that one of the things that you're doing by showing us monarchs without their famous orange colors is letting us kind of re-see them, from that's stripped away. But you're also doing it in a really beautiful way. And can you explain the process that you're using?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So really this body of work started for me when I saw the decline in the monarchs population.
Which has been precipitous, right?
It has. Yeah. So growing up in Bolinas in the 70s and 80s, there were really millions of monarchs in our state. And then in 2020, there were less than 2,000 monarchs counted in our entire state.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's when I personally woke up and really felt the loss of them in our environment. And so began to, ask, well, how do you show the absence of something, visually?
Right.
How do you express the fragility of a species? And so that was my question, and that led me to these alternative processes. And so that's where I started. So when you photograph monarchs, their color, and we all know and love them for their amazing, magnificent color. And so by removing that color, I felt like it spoke to that fact that they are vanishing, and then the next part for me was thinking about the materials, and I found vellum paper, which is sort of semi-translucent.
Okay.
And so I started printing in black and white onto that vellum paper. And it wasn't quite what I was going after, but it just was a lot of exploring. And I ended up with adding in gold leaf.
Okay.
And that's where that warmer color comes into the photo, and it comes from behind, so it's coming through the
gold leaf is on the
it's
vellum.
on the back of the vellum.
Oh, it's on the back of the vellum.
Yeah, exactly, coming through the photos. And it was really fun because gold leaf is so fragile, and vellum paper is so sensitive to the environment.
So it's
like
the perfect metaphor, yeah.
Yeah, so it really felt like just like the monarchs, you know. And so that's sort of the process that I do.
Let's take a look at the next one if we can. When I first glanced at something like this too, I thought that it was sepia. I mean, and that I was thinking, oh, she's trying to evoke the fact that this is something, even though it's in the present, will feel like it's something that took place in the ancient past.
Yeah.
So that seemed like another nice layer.
That interpretation, yes.
So we've got a little caterpillar on there.
Yeah, so this is an important photo for me because it talks about one of the main issues for monarchs, which is milkweed. And this photo I include in the series because this caterpillar is on tropical milkweed. And tropical milkweed is causing big problems for the monarchs. It carries EO parasites on it. And it also, because it's not native, it blooms continually. So when the monarchs come to our coast to overwinter, they're coming to rest. And when the milkweed is there and it's blooming, it pulls them out of that
out of their rest.
diapause, exactly. And so it's one of these simple things that are really important that we can do. Which is to not grow tropical milkweed and to instead grow one of the many native milkweeds that we have and that do flourish in California. And so that's one of the main things that they need and that I try to point out through the work. So right now, like in the exhibit, along with the photos, I have writing that goes along with each one, and lots of informational handouts, and that's a really important part.
Right. Yeah.
Of
so
the
it's
work.
the beauty of the photos, but there's a lot of learning that goes on.
Yeah,
too.
exactly.
Yeah. Let's take a look at the next one. Pupae.
Yeah. So this is a chrysalis, and you can see the butterfly in there.
Just barely. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So when it becomes transparent like that, the butterfly will be coming out soon. And it takes about 10 to 14 days, I believe, that they are in the chrysalis.
Okay.
And then it's really amazing to see when they come out, they hang on to the shell for about an hour. And, it's just a special moment before they fly away.
Right. And then they end up looking like this. Yeah.
Yes.
My mom was a kindergarten teacher, and she developed a whole science kit, I remember, around the life cycle of the monarch butterfly.
That's so
And it was always really fascinating to her kindergartners, just this idea that something could change so drastically from, a caterpillar and then this phase in the middle to this gorgeous image that we have here.
Yeah, children really connect and understand with that metamorphosis that they see in the monarch.
Right.
And I've teamed up with some scientists, and one of them, Audrey Fusco, she's doing a program in schools and actually creating way stations. So places where the monarchs can find nectar, and the children are involved in planting.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Let's see what we've got next. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, this is California brittle bush. And so part of when I first started photographing or thinking about this project, there weren't any monarchs to photograph. I only really saw a few that year.
Wow.
So I started educating myself about what they need in their habitat and the native plants that they need and the native nectar plants. And so this is one of them. and I have other ones in the series.
Let's take a look.
This is yarrow.
Okay.
It's very important for the monarch. And the thing I've learned also is when we talk about a species, like we can't really talk about them without talking about their habitat. And so the more I go along, the more I've learned how important it is to really integrate their habitat into the discussion. This one is at Pismo Beach. And sorry, the one before was in Bolinas, where I'm from. But this was at Pismo Beach, and this was I guess 2021. They came back. Their numbers came up a bit. And they did for the past 2 years. But even so, they still remain at a 95% decline.
Yeah. So a little cause for hope, but also a lot of worry.
Yeah,
trepidation.
exactly. So there is hope, and now's a critical time.
Right.
Yeah.
There's 2 triptychs. I love these here. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. This is Seaside Daisy, and this loves Santa Barbara.
Okay. we should know it, yeah.
And then the sunflowers, monarchs love. And the other thing I like to think about is when you are planting for monarchs, you're also planting for all pollinators, really.
Okay.
You know, and so you can think broadly like that.
Right.
Yeah. This I call In Flight, and it just felt like it was just a precious moment of capturing this little tiny butterfly, you know, flying so courageously.
Well, I want to pause on this one just for a minute because I think we haven't really talked about your artistry very much yet, but I mean, just the way that those 3 stems are kind of trisecting the space and the where the butterfly is, and then the darker, heavier, part down at the bottom with that light at the top. It's just a very well composed photograph, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see what's next. Back to the caterpillar.
Yeah, back to the caterpillar, and back to just remembering each stage of their life, of the life cycle of the monarch.
Kind of a classic photo there.
Yeah.
Iconic.
Yeah, the thing I really enjoy with this process is that each one is unique, so I can never really make it exactly the same again. So you'll see the lines and the wrinkles in the paper, and cracks happen, and you know, the gold leaf just doesn't lie down the same each time, and so that's been
each one is a
so each one really is
work of
that's
art,
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, Elizabeth, if people are just joining us, we're looking at your Return of the Western Monarch series, but we've only got a little over 10 minutes, and I want to go to another one, Washed Ashore. And so as we look at the first image, tell us a little bit about what we're going to see in this grouping of photos.
Thank you. So this project takes place in the Hawaiian Islands, and I've been focusing on marine debris on the 8 main islands.
Okay.
And so I started this project in 2018, and I've been photographing landscapes as well as attending beach cleanups and photographing cleanups, and then interviewing people there that are responding to the problem.
Right.
And so bringing together those.
And here's some folks.
Yeah. This was actually, I included this because this was on the day that the project really started for me, and I was sitting there, and there were just so many small pieces of plastic on the beach, and then there was this huge yellow crate, and the waves kept bringing it in and pounding it deeper and deeper, and then all these people just got up and just started trying to get it out. And that's when I realized the incredible effort that's going on in Hawaii, and felt that I wanted to learn more about it.
Right.
And they really had an understanding that they needed to get that crate out before it was broken down,
Right.
even
And
into those
that's
small
where
pieces.
plastics really do their damage, isn't it, when they get really small?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. If you get them out when they're bigger, then it's easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Folks on the beach here.
Yeah, so part of the project as I went along was realizing that fishing nets, abandoned fishing nets and derelict fishing nets were a huge part of the problem.
Okay.
They're about 50% of what is being picked up in Hawaii.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize
And
that.
they are endangering a lot of the wildlife there. And they have a lot of threatened species there as well. So it was important to me to include that in the body of work.
Right.
And this photo shows these super sacks that they use now. Each sack, it weighs about 350 pounds.
Oh, my word.
And so their volunteers are hiking out to the coast to clean up, and then it's a helicopter lifts
picks
them
up the sack. Wow.
back in. But yeah, so in Hawaii, the issue is mostly on the eastern side of each island, because the North Pacific gyre sits to the west of Hawaii, and that is one of the biggest accumulation zones of plastic in the world. I think it is the biggest of the 5. So the winds and currents are bringing the debris to the shore.
So those were images of sort of what it looked like as you were getting together these works of art. Well, let's take a look at the actual photographs that, and so we have these diptychs here, right? So on the left we have a gorgeous image of a beach, and on the right we have stuff that you picked up from that beach.
Yeah. So this was my personal response to the issue as I went along. So I found that I could go to a beautiful place and take a photograph and it wouldn't show the plastic in the sand.
Right.
And so I decided to take a half an hour at each location.
Okay, interesting.
And I just lie it out. I just lie it out right there, and there's no planning. And then I pair it with the photo of where I took it from.
But you say there's no planning, but it looks to me like it's pretty artfully arranged.
Well, maybe intuitively.
Intuitively arranged, okay.
But no, I just really try to lie it out.
Right.
And then I do label, the title of each of these is the number of plastic that I picked up. So it'll be 356 or 520. This is a big one. This was, I think, 904 pieces of plastic.
Let's hold on that just for a second, because one of the things as I was looking at them before the show, I was thinking that part of the irony is that you had made these beautiful compositions with this, evil material, plastic, because this does look like it could be, a Jackson Pollock painting or something like that from the distance that I'm looking at. What's your sense of making art out of this noxious material?
Yeah, well, that's really exactly what I was exploring, was sort of we want to turn away from plastic marine debris.
Right.
We don't really want to look at it. And so I was trying to find a way, how could I get someone to actually engage and go, what is that? And then go closer and go, oh.
Oh, yeah.
So there's sort of a pull and a repulsion at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was really important to me to include the beauty of place along with the plastic. And so really it is about just slowing down and looking at what's there.
Right.
And that's been the process for me personally, to identify things and wonder about them and where they came from.
Right.
And as I've gone along, I've gotten to know more about the kinds of plastic and been very impressed with the community there and how they're studying the plastic and where it's coming from. They do surveys and in different locations, and to look at the different companies that are responsible, and then taking their knowledge back to those companies.
Right. Now, I think we have one more series. No, that's what we've got. Yeah, because I'm really wowed by that work. So we've got just 3 minutes left.
Okay.
So I want to ask you a little bit more about the activist nature of what you're doing. And you're working on a book right now for the Global Green Fund, all right?
Yeah.
And tell me about that.
Yeah. So with that project, we're asking the grantees to tell their stories in their own words about how they started organizing, what the issue was. So say it was mining in their community that contaminated their water. That story can be found in many different parts of the world.
Right.
And so it's an effort to have people tell their stories and to learn from one another, and how those movements can be shared and translated to different parts of the world that are seeing the same issues. And so this upcoming book is about that. And so it puts my photos with the specific stories
with the
of
narratives
people.
that are
That's
going on,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's obviously one of the big important ideas of the current environmental movement is to look very local, as you've just done, picking up these plastics off a specific beach, and then thinking in these large terms, and then making connections with places, as you just said, where the same thing is happening, even though it's on the other side of the world.
Yeah, that's right. I really agree with that. And that's actually one of the gifts of this new environmental hub in Santa Barbara, is that it's creating a space for people to come together and work
And talk.
to accelerate what we're doing
Right.
in response to environmental problems. Yeah.
In the less than 90 seconds, Elizabeth, I'm going to ask you, if someone is just starting out as a photographer, what are one or two pieces of advice that you would give that person?
Well, I think I would just say, just trust your instinct on the stories you want to cover, and just follow your heart, and just go for it.
Any specific technical things?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, yeah, there's so many.
there's
But
so many. Yeah, but what's the
That's
number
it.
one thing that you would say?
Just slow down.
Slow down.
Slow down. Take your time. Never rush yourself, and take time wherever you are, and go even longer than you thought you needed, and go back, and look again, and that would be, I think, my main advice.
Wise advice. You seem like a wise person.
Thank you, David.
Well, it's been a real pleasure looking at your work, and can't wait to see what you do next. So thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
The Creative Community is a co-production of TVSB in Santa Barbara and CAPS Media in Ventura. I'm your host, David Starkey, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.